Let's get real. Uncomfortably real. What if I told you that you are not in the driver's seat of your own life? No, this isn't some new age philosophy. It's more intimate and more jarring. It's the feeling that a ghost lives inside your own machine, making choices for you. It's the secret force behind every time you choose the donut when you swore you'd start the diet. Every time you send that text you know you'll regret. Every time you sabotage a great opportunity just when you were on the verge of success. Can you feel it? That disconnect between what you truly want and what you actually do. Have you ever been sitting in complete quiet and a thought slithers into your mind, wearing your voice, saying, "You're a fraud, you'll never be good enough, they're just tolerating you"? And here's the kicker. That voice isn't trying to destroy you, it's trying to protect you. But its rulebook is outdated. It's operating from a place of old pain, a wound you've mistaken for your entire personality. You've gotten used to living with a low-level hum of anxiety, to repeating patterns that you know are pulling you under, to pushing away the very people you want to hold close, to numbing your feelings with distraction, to acting like everything's okay when a part of you is screaming to just make it all stop. Why do you binge watch shows you don't even like? Why do you doom scroll through your phone until your eyes burn? Why do you revisit the same painful thoughts in the dark when no one is watching? It's not because you're weak or broken. It's a signal, a distress call from your deepest self that you've ignored for so long, it has turned into a permanent siren. Now, I'm about to say something that might sting. If you've always felt out of place, if you feel things more deeply than others, if your emotional life is a chaotic storm, it's because your inner world is not standard issue. It's a high definition, high sensitivity system. And that's a problem for the low resolution world around you. Because people like you can't be ignored. Your presence is felt before it's seen. It challenges people. It destabilizes them. It makes them confront a depth they've buried so deep they forgot it was even there. And here is the heart of the matter. That intensity, that profound sensitivity, it's not a defect in your programming. It's a feature. They are built in diagnostics, screaming that a core need in your life has gone unanswered. But instead of reading the error message, you've tried to shut down the system with noise. You built a life of frantic business to avoid stillness. You filled every spare moment with sound so you couldn't hear the terrifying honesty of your own soul. But you can't uninstall it because it's not an app. It's your operating system. And the more you fight it, the more it glitches, manifesting as obsessions, toxic cycles, paralyzing anxiety, and actions you can't explain but can't seem to stop. Because it's your core programming trying to get your attention. And you know the most insidious part of this. Society taught you your pain was a problem to be fixed. It taught you to be ashamed of it, to cover it with a smile, to medicate it with hollow positivity. But you're still here, and that ghost in your machine hasn't left. In fact, it's watching you read this, waiting, not to sabotage you, but for you to finally turn and listen. This message isn't for the blissfully unaware. It's for those like you, who suspect that the thing that shatters them is also the thing that will save them. We're not here for easy answers or motivational quotes. We're going to look directly at the code, your patterns, your compulsions, your fears, your bottomless need for approval, your hollow spaces, your silent rage. We're going to learn the language of your inner system. Because your chaos isn't random, it has a syntax. It's ancient, logical, and brilliant. Your pain isn't your cage. It's your instruction manual. Are you brave enough to look at what you've been running from? Because after you see it, you can't unsee it. And then you have a choice. Will you continue to be a ghost in your own machine? Or will you finally grab the keyboard, open the command line, and start learning the code to who you really are? Because only there, in the uncommented lines you've ignored, lies your real power. Quiet, raw, vast, and hungry to execute. Let's talk about a subject almost no one wants to admit, the sheer exhaustion of being conscious. Not just aware of things, but truly, deeply conscious. The kind that makes you see the subtext in every conversation, the hidden pain behind someone's smile, the raw truth of your own motivations. And yes, I know it's a burden, because when you perceive this much, you feel this much. And when you feel this much, you start to invent ways to not be completely overwhelmed. The trouble is, those coping mechanisms are what ultimately disconnect you from your real self. Have you seen this play out? You find yourself getting compulsively neat when you feel chaotic inside. You get addicted to work you don't even love. You sabotage intimacy right when it starts to feel safe. But there is no flaw behind this. There is simply undigested awareness. When you have this level of sensitivity, reality isn't just processed by your mind. It's absorbed by your entire being, unfiltered. Every vibration, every look, every unspoken word hits you with the force of a tidal wave. This creates an internal flood that most people can't imagine. This is where those repetitive behaviors are born. Not from a character flaw, but from a system overload. You aren't damaged, you're saturated. Your mind is analyzing more data. Your body is storing more tension. Your heart is carrying more weight until it hits its limit. And then the compulsion kicks in, the escape, the obsession, the release. But here's the cruel trick. The moment you find that relief, the food, the distraction, the argument, your system flags it as a solution, even if it's slowly poisoning you. And because you are conscious, you see the paradox. But you can't stop, because your mind doesn't listen to reason when what it desperately needs is an emotional release valve. This is why the pattern isn't a choice, it's a reflex. And the more you fight it with raw willpower, the stronger its grip becomes. Because you don't need more self-control. You need more self-compassion, more space, more permission to feel the things you've been pushing down for a lifetime. And you know what makes it 1,000 times harder? From the outside, you look fine. You have good days, you function, you go to work, you smile at parties. This makes you second guess your own reality. Am I just being dramatic? Am I making this up? Why am I a mess inside when my life is objectively okay? That is the master trap. The gaslighting you do to yourself when you start to believe your pain needs a good reason to be valid. Your pain doesn't need a resume. Its existence is reason enough. Now listen, because this part is crucial. The more emotionally perceptive you are, the more sophisticated your escape hatches become. You might not need obvious addictions. For you, it's overthinking, intellectualizing your feelings, being busy all the time, becoming everyone's therapist but your own. You say, I've dealt with that, when you've really just buried it under a mountain of concepts. Your escape looks more polished now, but it is just as isolating. And now we get to the core concept. Your shadow isn't just the parts of you that you find ugly or shameful. It's also made of all the things you don't have the courage to admit you need, the longing you judge as weak, the anger you've polished into polite frustration, the desperate need for recognition that you've disguised as self-sufficiency. And the more you deny these fundamental needs, the more your unconscious will scream for them through other means. You don't have a lack of self-control, you have a lack of self-permission. Permission to be vulnerable, permission to be angry without feeling guilty, permission to cry without needing a justification, permission to say, I need help, without feeling like a failure. The truth is, most of your patterns are not born from a love of destructive pleasure. They're born from emotional starvation, from needs that have gone unheard for so long they've turned toxic. You want to know why it's so difficult to break the cycle? Because your pain, as agonizing as it is also familiar. It's predictable. You know its edges, its weight, its taste. But true peace, calm, and genuine connection, that feels alien, uncomfortable, even suspicious. That's why you wreck things when they start going right. Not because you're a masochist, and not because you don't deserve it, but because the emotional software you've run for years has been coded to see good as a threat, because good things can be lost, because peace makes you lower your guard, because you simply don't know how to function without a battle to fight. And this is the deepest truth of it all. Your internal system does not prioritize happiness. It prioritizes survival. And if you learned to survive in chaos, then your system will seek chaos to feel safe. That's why you can't let go of that person who hurts you. That's why you repeat the job that drains you. That's why you are addicted to the very things you despise. Because your body has learned to equate familiar with safe, even if the familiar is agonizing. So this isn't a battle of will. It's a deep, systemic reprogramming. And that process doesn't happen by force. It happens when you finally start looking with radical honesty at what you've been avoiding. When you build moments in your day where you can just feel without a narrative or a solution. When you stop trying to fix yourself and simply ask, what part of me is crying for attention? What emotion am I suppressing? What deep need am I judging so harshly that it has to scream to be heard? Your sensitivity, your intensity, your ability to feel the universe on a profound level are not bugs in your system. They are the artifacts of a mind that had to adapt to an environment that wasn't safe. And now, that same magnificent system is asking for a new directive, not just to survive, but to heal, to integrate, to come home to yourself, without apologies, without masks, without a filter, with all the raw, messy, beautiful chaos that entails. Because in the end, the most rebellious act is to be yourself without an anesthetic. And that is the hardest work, but it's the only work that will ever set you free. And just when you start to accept that the point isn't to erase your patterns, but to understand their origins, another layer unfolds that can shake you to your core. You're not just wrestling with your own story. You are carrying stories that aren't yours, invisible legacies, burdens that you didn't create, but which are yours to end if you choose to do the work. Because yes, and this might sound jarring, but many of the tidal waves of emotion that flow you did not begin with you. They began with your parents, their parents, your ancestors. And the worst part is that this data isn't just a thought, it's stored in your physical body. That free, floating anxiety that has no trigger, that profound melancholy you can't trace back to a specific event, that reflexive guilt you feel when you choose yourself. Sometimes these aren't your feelings. They are unconscious allegiances you formed without knowing, as if your nervous system became a hard drive for inherited trauma. They don't teach you this in psychology one-on-one. You won't read it in most self-help books. But you feel it. You live it every time you try to level up in life, and an invisible gravity pulls you back down. Has this ever happened? You commit to a genuine change. You start setting boundaries, prioritizing your needs, saying no, and suddenly you are flooded with shame, as if you've broken a sacred vow you never even made. That is emotional inheritance. It's not just your history. It's in the DNA of how your family learned to survive, how your role models coped by repressing, by silencing, by enduring. You inherited their survival strategy, and now, when you try to write a new one, your own system flags it as a betrayal, a mortal danger. This is where most people retreat, because they interpret this pain as proof they are doing something wrong, when in fact it is proof they are finally doing something right. Real change doesn't feel like liberation at first. It feels like treason. You are breaking silent, multi-generational contracts that kept a dysfunctional but predictable peace. That's why growth hurts, not because you're failing, but because you may be the first person in your family line to heal out loud. And that is a lonely road. You will feel isolated. You will feel like you're losing your mind. But it is not madness. It is metamorphosis. It is a deep, generational cleansing. And nobody throws you a parade for this work. It's invisible. But you feel it in your bones. You know. So what do you do when the identity you've always known begins to dissolve? First, you must understand this is not an ending. It is a beginning. It's the precise moment your sense of self starts to be rebuilt, not on who you were told to be, but on who you actually are. And this begins another, equally monumental task: building true self-worth, not the fragile kind based on what you accomplish or how many people approve of you, I'm talking about core emotional self-worth, the kind that comes from knowing all of your parts and choosing to stand by them anyway. The kind that doesn't shatter when you make a mistake. The kind that becomes your own safety net. And here's a critical point. Most of us operate from a self-image built from the reflections in other people's eyes, parents, teachers, partners. That image eventually becomes a prison because we start living to defend it, not from love, but from a terror of being abandoned. And that's your next great liberation: to smash the statue, to stop being the reliable, easy going, strong, perfect person everyone expects, and to start being the messy, needy, gloriously imperfect person you actually are. This isn't simple because your value system is tied to that statue. If you learned your worth comes from being a caretaker, then setting a boundary will feel like you're being selfish and cruel. But that feeling is a lie. It's an echo. You do not owe anyone a performance of yourself. You are not on this earth to manage the emotional comfort of others at the expense of your own soul. And if your energy, your depth, your truth makes other people squirm, let them. You didn't come here to be comfortable. You came here to be true. Now listen to this with your whole body. You do not need to be hypervigilant anymore. You do not need to play out every worst case scenario to protect yourself from hurt. The war is over, but your body hasn't gotten the memo. That's why it's still braced for impact. That's why you have tension in your shoulders, why you clench your jaw, why your digestion is a mess. Your body was trained to believe that relaxation is dangerous. And here is the real work: to gently, patiently teach your nervous system that it is safe to stand down. This is not achieved with wishful thinking. It's achieved through small, consistent acts of self-care, through saying no and staying with the discomfort, through moments of total stillness where you tell yourself, I am safe. I do not have to perform. I do not have to justify my existence. I do not have to rescue anyone. And yes, in the beginning, you will feel guilt. You will feel an emptiness, a profound sadness. But that isn't a sign you're doing it wrong. It's the sign of a detox. You are metabolizing a lifetime of stress. You are letting go of responsibilities that were never yours to begin with. And as you begin to live from this new center, something miraculous happens. Your compulsions quiet down. Your anxieties lose their teeth, not because you conquered them, but because you no longer need their misguided protection. You're no longer running. You are finally home, in your own skin. You are operating from a place of deep connection, not from a place of deep lack. And that is the secret they don't tell you, that when you learn to truly be with yourself, most of your wars simply cease to exist. Your intensity doesn't vanish, it gets a new job. It becomes your focus, your creativity, your unwavering authenticity. It is no longer a liability, it is your superpower. And then the fight is over. You stop seeing your sensitivity as a curse and start recognizing it for what it always was: a gateway, a guide, a way to experience this world that is richer, deeper, and truer. And that journey starts with you, right here, right now, in the moment you can no longer lie to yourself, where your soul is begging for integrity, where your body is crying out for rest, where your story is demanding to be rewritten from a place of consciousness, not a place of pain. So don't numb it, don't hide it, don't rationalize it, meet it, hear it, hold it, because in the very part of yourself that you have feared the most is the precise key to your liberation, and you are already ready, even if you can't feel it yet. And this is where the game truly changes, because just when you think you've grasped what is happening, just when you feel you are beginning to decode the emotional chaos inside, something more fundamental emerges, something most people will never access. Underneath all the pain, the patterns, the anxiety, and the desperate need to be seen, lies an unbreakable force waiting to be claimed, a force that has nothing to do with what they sell you as confidence or empowerment. It isn't a polished image of success. It's something rawer, more real: your capacity to be your own anchor in any storm, to hold yourself without needing applause, without needing to feel good all the time, without demanding that you be a constantly improving version of yourself. And when you find that, when you learn to live from that core, the entire illusion shatters. Life is no longer a frantic audition to prove your worth. Your relationships transform. Your work transforms. Your very posture transforms. You don't need to try so hard. You're no longer desperately trying to find a place to belong. You start to become your own place. And in this noisy, demanding world, that is a revolutionary act. But there is a final trap, and it is the most seductive of all. It's the belief that now that you understand, you will no longer stumble. The idea that this knowledge grants you immunity, that you will never again fall back into old patterns, never again doubt yourself, never again run from your own feelings. Let me be clear, you will fall again. Growth does not make you perfect, it makes you honest. You will see the old patterns re-emerge. You will feel the sting of anxiety. You will have days where you feel lost and confused. And that is okay, because the difference is this: now you don't abandon yourself when you fall. Now you see it, you notice it, and you choose yourself again and again and again. That is the fundamental shift from a life lived in reaction to a life lived in truth. It is not that you become immune to pain. It is that you no longer require yourself to be perfect in order to be worthy of your own love, your own respect, your own rest. You grant yourself permission to be fully human, complete, contradictory, magnificent, and free. And here is the final realization, the one that only those who've walked this path can truly grasp. Your shadow is not what's holding you back. Your shadow is the engine of your awakening. Every time you are overwhelmed, every time you break down, every time you feel you cannot go on, it is not a failure. It is your soul saying, stop ignoring this. It's time. This part of you needs to be healed. And when you finally surrender, when instead of fighting or numbing, you simply decide to breathe with what is, that is the start of your revolution. That is the start of your real life. So if you've made it to this point, if every word has felt like it was pulled from your own soul, then know this: it is not a coincidence. You are here for a reason. You are standing on the precipice where the old you can no longer continue. And if this message has activated something within you, if it gave you a name for your struggle, a sense of truth, or the gut punch of recognition you needed, then subscribe, not for me, but as an act of commitment to yourself. Because here, we don't do superficial. We will keep digging, keep revealing, keep naming the things that most people are too afraid to even whisper. And I want to see you in the comments. If this message truly landed for you, write, I am decoding my own program. That will be our signal. That will tell me you made it. You're not turning back, you're ready. And now, I'll take my leave. But not with a comforting quote, not with a tidy summary. I leave you with a question designed to follow you long after this screen goes dark. If you were no longer afraid of what is true, who would you finally allow yourself to be? We'll see each other in the next discovery or your next revelation. The choice is yours.